What's up, everybody? My name is Dylan Weisman, and today we have something special for you. We have a mental game video taken directly from the Advanced PLO Mastery course that we're giving you for free. The point of this video is to give you some additional tools to help navigate some of the negative emotional headspaces that you'll encounter either as a poker professional or as a poker enthusiast, either way. This information is helpful no matter what stake you play, no matter where you are in your poker journey. The intention is to make it such that you have less emotional and mental weight put on yourself as you continue to navigate in and out of poker. I think this is especially applicable given the time that we're in. There's a lot of variance that you maybe can't control in your day-to-day life outside of poker, and everyone needs some additional help. And so my intention with releasing this video for free to everybody is to just hopefully make it easier for you to navigate the space that we find ourselves in. And I think that this video, especially the tools in this video, if taken to heart, can really help with that. So enjoy the video and have a great day. What's up, Upswing fam? Today we have a video that I'm actually really excited to present because it's a topic that actually is very close to home for me. I've struggled a lot throughout my entire poker career between finding the balance of being self-critical in order to help myself improve and get better, and shaming myself into not saying that I'm good at poker or not having strong amounts of confidence. And I think that this is something that a lot of poker players deal with. The way that I've learned to combat this is to find self-love and to create new vocabulary in the ways that I talk to myself. The focus of today's video is to share some of those learnings with you all and give you some vocabulary to talk to yourself, as well as to give you an idea and bring an awareness to when you might be shaming yourself versus being critical in a healthy way. So the first thing I want to say is that loving yourself is a good thing. I think that this should be straightforward. I think that this should be something that is taken maybe for granted, but it's totally not taken for granted. I've had conversations with so many of my poker friends who've been playing poker forever, and I think a lot of the times there's this thought process that you have to hate yourself. You have to find the hunger. You have to find the parts of yourself that you want to destroy in order to become a better poker player. And I think that can be true in the short term, especially if you're I don't know, it's during the series, you're on a downswing and you need to really self-motivate. So you're like, fuck it, I'm going to just find all of my leaks and I'm going to hate them and I'm going to crush them and become stronger. And that's a sometimes okay learning mechanism. I don't want to completely discourage it, but I think that that'd be incredibly difficult over a long period of time. To hate yourself and to use that hatred to motivate, it can be effective in getting you to do lots of work because hate is a tool that gets us to do a lot of stuff as humans. But I just don't think that it's sustainable over the long term because you're just going to be in a super unhealthy framework when approaching the game of poker and approaching life generally. I took this from a podcast between Brene Brown, who is literally a shame researcher, and Tim Ferriss. I don't know if you're familiar with his podcast. I paraphrased here, but the general idea is that most of the people who are able to change over the long term are motivated by self-compassion, not by self-loathing. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that if we can find mechanisms to love our faults and to become more okay with who we are, we can then create sustainable infrastructure to then improve on those faults, because we're not feeling bad about ourselves for not being perfect. We don't have this Superman complex that makes us break down every time we make a small mistake. If we have the ability to love ourselves for who we are and to find some of the chinks in our armor and not to hardcore bang into them to try to fix them, but then slowly and tenderly work on those chinks and learn the tools to kind of to fix that, to fix those imperfections, that's a much more sustainable way to become healthier and to become more functional and perform at a higher level over the long term. In my opinion, one of the biggest logical fallacies that exist in the world of poker and in the world generally is that there's this idea that you have to be mean to yourself in order to be critical. You have to be rigid with yourself in order to be critical. And I just think that that is completely false. I think that you can be critical of yourself without being mean to yourself. And this is something that shows up a lot in poker. Poker players, from my perspective, fall into two categories. And obviously there's a huge spectrum and we're not polar here. Everyone's on the spectrum somewhere, but we're either overly critical or not critical enough. The people that aren't critical enough are maybe just playing the game recreationally, or they've been playing for such a long period of time that they maybe become a little bit complacent, right? They kind of think that they know what's going on, and so they aren't critical on their games, and usually those people fall off, let's be real. A lot of the people who are successful over a long period of time tend to be a little on the overly critical section. I for sure am one of those people. I am heavily critical of my own poker game, especially with the advent of Munker, when I can literally go find answers for whether or not I made a mistake in a certain spot. That it's created a system where I'm definitely always questioning myself and trying to learn. The issue with being overly critical is that it is helpful for helping us find mistakes, but if we're too critical, it's not going to be sustainable, because it's going to create this feedback loop that we aren't good enough, or that we are always underperforming, or that we don't know what we're doing. And if that's what's happening while you're playing the game of poker, you're just not going to feel confident in executing on the strategy that you've built in order to play the game successfully. And so there's a really fine line between being not critical enough, between being kind of critical, between being critical to a healthy level where you're engaging with mistakes but not taking them into your being, and then being overly critical where you question literally everything that you do. And so as professionals, our job is to recognize where we are, because if we could acknowledge that we're being overly critical, that probably means we're not playing our best, because we're not confident as we're executing on decisions. And if you don't have a structured way of thinking about playing the game of poker, if you're always questioning the decisions that you're making, if you're always questioning your overall strategy, you're not going to be able to execute effectively. And that is a very challenging place to be while trying to play poker over a long period of time. One thing that I really see as being true for poker players, especially at the higher stakes, is that the thing that tilts them the most is not getting sucked out on. They've been able to emotionally release variance, but what they haven't been able to emotionally release is when they make a mistake, because that's something they had control over. And there's literally something called a Superman complex, where when you make mistakes, you see yourself as being imperfect, therefore bad. There's a correlation between imperfection and negativity. There's no love for the imperfections that you have. There's no acceptance of the imperfections you have. You only are okay if you're being perfect all of the time. And that is just so completely unsustainable. Poker, and I have this written here, poker is a game of making and iterating on mistakes. None of us are Munker solver. None of us are perfect. Myself, Chris, literally the best players in the world, all make mistakes. And if you have an unhealthy relationship with making mistakes, you're going to have a really bad time, because it happens all the time. We always make mistakes, and you need to learn how to create a healthy feedback loop in order to iterate on your mistakes and grow and become a better poker player without taking that into your being. This slide demonstrates the most powerful tool that I've ever found in order to self-regulate and self-evaluate whether or not you're being critical of yourself in a healthy way or in an unhealthy way. There is a huge difference between admitting you make a mistake and shaming yourself. Shaming yourself has a huge emotional weight on top of it. And it's not just about the one mistake that you made, but it ties into this massive picture of you just like not being okay as a person. And it hurts. Like, shame crushes us from the inside. And I know that I had mentioned Brene Brown earlier, but has wonderful books on shame. I've mentioned this in other professional fundamentals videos. And so if what I'm saying really resonates with you, I would highly suggest that you can go to her website and like just start reading through her books so that you can start to build the vocabulary of self-awareness in the shame that you have. This is one tool that I'm going to give you that is, in my opinion, the most powerful. And it's the way that you talk to yourself. So in my experience, and this is both for myself, in relationships that I've had, in evaluating poker players that are really good. Like, when I talk to the best poker players in the world, the ones that have it down, when they're talking about making mistakes, it's not like I fucked that hand up. It's like, that was probably not correct. So instead of having a personalization of the mistake that you made, or using I language, right? It's like, I made this mistakes. I made this mistake. That language is toxic because it is creating a feedback loop that you are the mistake, that you are what is wrong. It's like, I made this mistake, versus the mistake just being a thing that happened, right? So my two examples are that how, like, a good way of talking to yourself would be that hand combination was probably a bit too wide. And a negative way of talking to yourself, or a shaming way of talking to yourself, is I really fucked that spot up by using that combination. And you can feel the difference in that two vocabulary. One is very unpersonalized. It is pretty much in a vacuum. It's like, oh, that was a mistake that happened. I can just go look that mistake up. Versus, oh, I'm terrible at poker. How could I ever make that mistake? I am that mistake. That mistake is going to eat me up. One feels healthy and sustainable. The other one is going to crush you. You can be self-critical without self-shaming. And that fact is something that if you want to be healthy over the long term, both in and outside of poker, you really need to pull into yourself. I think that it's easier said than done too. I know that I've gotten much, much better at this over time because I've literally made it a goal of mine, worked on it in therapy, to remove the Superman complex that I have and to not associate my self-worth with being perfect. But for some of us, it takes a long time to be able to differentiate between shaming yourself and being critical of yourself. If I could leave you with anything, it's that we are not our mistakes. I've said that in this video already, but it's incredibly pertinent. We are not when we mess up. Like, our being, us as humans, the way that we evaluate ourselves, are not about our mistakes, because humans are imperfect creatures. And if you have the feedback loop in your head that you need to be perfect in order to be okay, and that imperfection is bad, you aren't going to be able to live as healthily as if that fallacy was kind of wrung out of your brain. So now that we have built this vocabulary, and as I said, that is one tool. There's so many tools for learning the different ways that we talk to ourselves when we're shaming. But now that you kind of can understand that this is a thing that could happen to you, you can start to change your process. Because as we talk about in our awareness and recency bias video, awareness leads to change in process and thinking. So if you find yourself making a mistake and shaming yourself, it's important to learn to recognize that that's happening, right? It's not sufficient to just let it sit there, or to like make the mistake and then to just not do anything about it. You must bring an awareness to the fact that you are shaming yourself. You must acknowledge it. And then you have to learn to forgive yourself and then find love for yourself for making that mistake and for shaming yourself. Because now I've given you this kind of Pandora's box where not only are you going to start shaming yourself for making mistakes, but you're going to start shaming yourself for making a mistake. And that's also a really challenging thing that happens. The awareness is really important because it allows you to work on it, but it brings another layer of complexity. And I know that a lot of people might be mad at me because ignorance is bliss. But I don't believe in that. I truly don't believe that ignorance is bliss. I truly believe that by bringing awareness to yourself and acknowledging how you change over time, and acknowledging how you can be in control of your emotions and be in control of the ways that you interact with situations, it allows you to become a stronger and healthier and happier human being. So once you can recognize self-shaming, you can learn to forgive yourself and move on. There's a couple caveats to this. If you're in the middle of a session and can't forgive yourself for making a mistake, the probability of your play becoming worse goes up exponentially. So if you can't forgive yourself, like if you acknowledge that you made a mistake and you acknowledge yourself that you are shaming yourself, but can't get to that forgiveness step, you need to take a step back. Maybe you just go on a 5-minute walk, but if it's sitting inside of you, you need to leave the poker room. And I know that we are in this thought process of like, no, I have to put in hours, I have to have the grind. But if you're training yourself that it's okay to shame yourself and then continue to play, it's going to be really challenging to get better. And there's also different layers of this. Like if you're shaming yourself a little bit, but it's not completely hurting you, playing is going to be healthy because then you could learn to move through it by playing. You can learn to accept your emotions, while, like, even if they're happening a little bit, and it's kind of like putting training weights on yourself because you have that awareness. If you're in a shame spiral, if you're sitting there like consistently going on in your head about how you fucked up and how you know you fucked up, but it doesn't matter because you're not perfect. So even though you're aware of it, you're still freaking out in your brain and maybe having like some sort of a mini panic attack. I don't want to use that word lightly, but maybe let's use shame storm instead. Like maybe you're just shame storming yourself. You just need to leave. It doesn't matter how good the game is. It doesn't matter that you are a professional and you should be putting in hours. If you've gotten to the point where you can't control the fact that you're shaming yourself so much, you're no longer fit to play. And that's just the reality of the situation. Another thing that I personally have noticed, and I actually find this true with my other friends that I have a conversation about this topic with, is that if you're finding a lot of shame for yourself in your poker game, it probably isn't just in your poker game. Usually poker tilts and things like that is a symptom of something larger that's going on in your life, but it comes out so much in poker because it's such an easy reflection of other things, right? In poker, we have high stress situations. We have tons of variance that's happening constantly. And because it's such a pressure cooker, it acts as a mirror for what's happening inside of you. And so if you find yourself tilting a ton, shaming yourself a ton, being emotionally unstable at the poker table, it's probably not just about poker. There's probably some other stuff going on. I like to see that as a positive thing though, because you can use poker as a tool to work on everything. I have it here is to work on a tool for your self-love and compassion, but I think that it's a tool to work on your self-love, your self-compassion, your motivation, your consistency, your communication skills, your logical thinking. Poker is this tool that can turn you into an absolute monster. And that's why dudes like Doug Polk, Ryan Fee are so successful outside of poker. It's because they trained super hard in this arena and then took those learnings, not just the logical learnings, but the emotional learnings and the sustainability learnings, and they applied them to other systems outside of the game. So take this gift of the game of poker into yourself and use it to become a better person. That's all that I got for y'all today. As you can probably tell, I'm really passionate about this subject. It's something that I've spent a lot of my life on. It's something that I've spent countless hours on in personal therapy, countless hours on maybe in a altered headspace that I really put in that self-love and that work in order to progress and find more acceptance for myself. This is not easy to work on. I'm not saying that just by watching this video, it's going to change overnight. But what I do hope is that you can start to bring these tools and this self-awareness into yourself and into your poker game in order to build a more sustainable infrastructure for you to be able to play poker and to be healthy over the long term. I appreciate all of you for watching. Thank you and have a great day. Thanks for taking the time to watch this free video from the Advanced PLO Mastery course. If you want some more mental game spiciness, as well as some badass Pot Limit Omaha theory from Chris Wayner and myself, make sure to head over to upswingpoker.com to learn more about the Advanced PLO Mastery course out now. Have a great day, everybody. Take it easy.